All right. If you are watching us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or even Twitch, we're live tonight and we're back and we are going to melt your faces off with Dave Harvey, the guitarist and founder of Millennial Reign. So stick around. Dave, welcome to the madness that we call over here Raven's Heart.
Good to be here. I like that intro too. It has a real Vikings feel to it.
Hey, and I'd like to welcome our viewers. You're coming on. I love to see that eyeball light up with the numbers right there. And we already had a comment from Jermaine, who's tuning in from Georgia. He's with the band Tricord, and he says, "Good evening." And I am so excited about this edition tonight because the band we're talking about, their style is right in my wheelhouse. This is kind of where I camp out, and people that have been watching this live streaming with us for several years now know that this is where I'm at. And Dave, I have to ask you this question. Our viewers and our listeners are going to hear this in a minute. You guys are epic. Your sound is epic. How did it go from being a concept, this band that you had, Millennial Reign, in your mind, to being this powerhouse of epic metal? How did it all start, and how did we get where we're at now?
Well, that's a few steps. I can literally remember being in a church service one day, as far as the name goes. And of course, the pastor was talking about the 1,000-year millennial reign. And when he said that phrase, I remember thinking in my mind, that would be a really, really good name for a band. As far as going from the concept, I didn't get around to making it into a band until 2010, and it actually started as a recording project. I had several songs that had never been released from an old band that I used to play in from about 99 to 2005, somewhere around in there, called 316. And they were 80 style songs. And I decided one day, you know what, those songs have never been released, so I'm going to record them and release them. So I recruited the old drummer that I played with in 316 to do the drum parts, and a singer that I worked with kind of on and off here in the Dallas area, and ended up recording those songs and releasing them just as a recording project. And that was, we released that back around 2012. And the next album I started working on, well, that sounded a lot more like the style that I have been listening to for the last 20 plus years, which is European power metal. Mm-hmm. And I was going to do that just as a recording project as well. But I recruited a singer. It was a different singer, the guy by the name of James Guest. And once we started working together, well, I started shopping around to different record labels, and Ulterium picked us up. And they started talking to us saying, look, this stuff really needs to be played live. This is their words, not mine. This needs to be taken out to the masses, basically, is what they were saying. So we decided, I talked to the singers, like, okay, well, let's see if we can find a few people to recruit and just build it into a band. So 2015 is when we released the next album, Carry the Fire. And by that time, it was just before the actual release that we had every member in place, and it formed into a band. And then we started doing live shows after that.
That blows my mind how you started out just as a studio project. I know a few other bands. There's one that I work with locally here that started out as a studio project. And we got them out on the stage for the first time as a band at our rock fest that we do here in Charleston. And they're a lot like you are, very heavy 80s influence. And I want to talk about that for a minute because, I'm an 80s kid. I grew up on the hair metal and everything during the 80s. And and the rock of the 80s. And when I listen to your music, there's just so much going on there. And we're going to get to a song in just a second. I hear all sorts of different genres. I hear the European power metal in there. I hear the 80s in there. What other components do you weave into your music? What other genres, what other influences are there in the unique sound of Millennial Reign?
Well, in the 80s, I was really heavily influenced by bands like Queensryche, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. I was a big Dokken fan. I wasn't really into what they called the glam metal, Poison, Motley Crue, those type bands. They were okay, but it wasn't what I listened to. It wasn't what I was into. I was into the more serious, I guess at the time you could call them darker, more just straight front metal and not pop metal. And then in around 98, 99 is when I actually first got on the internet. And not to go into a long story on that, but the 90s were a very dark time for me musically. I was not a grunge fan, not at all. And that was the only thing that there was to listen to. The bands I was playing in were mostly cover bands, and we were having to play a lot of that stuff, to make money at it. But when I got on the internet around 98 and 99 and started discovering record labels and just other sites out of Europe and what was going on in Europe, and I discovered bands like Ed Guy, Avantasia, Master Plan, several other bands that were just in the power metal genre, and it was like the lights from heaven. It just came down, and I knew that was the direction I was going from there. I started ordering albums directly from Europe. I had to wait a while to get them, but I started ordering from Europe, and that's all I've listened to now for the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I camp out. Hey, we got a lot of comments coming through, and I want to bring these up, especially this one. It is from Brian Diffie, and he says, Dave Harvey is the greatest guitarist that I have ever worked with.
Okay, this is the one that I was just talking about that we released the studio project. He is a pastor, and he also plays drums, and he's the one that played drums on the first studio project album.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That is cool. Hey, we got Michelle, Suzanne. She says hello, and I know her personally. She loves to shred, and she is really into the power metal and the symphonic metal like we are. She was so excited when I said that Millennial Reign was coming on. I had a lot of people like, oh man, that is so awesome. And then Jermaine from Tricord, he says he was born in the 90s, but loves 80s music so much. Another comment here. Everybody wants to weigh in, and that's hieroglyphics right there. So we'll try to translate that. I'll give that to my dog to translate in a few minutes while we take a listen to a track here. It's interesting you say Dokken because they were one of my favorites in the 80s. Yeah. And the first time I heard anything from Dokken that I experienced them, it wasn't Nightmare on Elm Street. No. It was the song Alone Again, the ballad that they did. Right. And that just sucked me in. I was like, that is just so beautiful, know? And Michelle, she's back for more. She says, hey, Dave, I heard you on Metal Sharpens Metal last Saturday. So,
wow. Okay. Is she from the New York area?
She is down here in Charleston, South Carolina. So, okay. Yeah, Rick
Yeah, now Dokken, I actually was in the military. I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, and that was my first experience with MTV, and that was back in 1983. And I used to sit for hours and just watch it because I was so consumed by it. I didn't have that from where I came from in Arkansas. And I was living in Arkansas at the time, and in the area that I lived in, we got 3 channels. 4, 7, and 11, and that was it. And then, 2 if you want to count PBS.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 4 if you want to count PBS. But anyway, when I got to my first duty station and just started, all these 80s bands just started coming through on MTV. Well, Dokken was one of them, and Breaking the Chains was the first thing I was exposed to by them.
Wow. Hey, and we talk about power metal here. We've got Orlando Vicente. I think you know this guy from Armor of God out of Florida.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he said he's met you. He said, good evening, brothers. The first time I saw Ed Guy live, it blew my mind at Prog Power. And Orlando's told me.
Yeah, Sebastian. What is his name? Sebastian. I can't think of his last name, but anyway, the vocalist, especially in the earlier stuff, the guy was just phenomenal, phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's take a listen to some Millennial Reign tracks. The first one that I want to take a listen to and share with our viewers and listeners is the one Innocent Cry off of your album Carry the Fire Again. I've listened to this numerous times before we've done this edition. And not only is this song heavy musically, but lyrically, it's a very heavy song. It'll really make you think. Can you tell us a little bit what this song is about before we take a deep dive into it?
Well, James, our original vocalist, of course, he's the one that wrote the lyrics to it. But in a nutshell, you go back to the Old Testament, and you had these people that were sacrificing their children to the god Molech. That's basically what you're seeing with the United States today in all the abortions. And it's just mainly getting into the abortion. I'm at a loss for the word right now, but it's an anti-abortion song is what it is.
Wow, it's a heavy song, and it's very well put together. We're going to play that, and you're right. That is what's going on with abortion. It is child sacrifice to Moloch. It's just taken on a prettier name so that people are a little bit more accepting of it. But we got to call it what it is, and it is child sacrifice to a fallen deity is what it is. Well, this is Innocent Cry by Millennial Reign. And hey, if you want to make comments on what you like about this song, go ahead and we'll put them up after and we'll discuss a little bit more. Again, this is Innocent Cry by Millennial Reign. Okay, that takes a wrecking ball to Moloch and abortion.
Yeah, that's kind of the point, I guess.
That is a wrecking ball. And Jermaine, he made some comments, and I want to bring them up because we're going to have people listening to this on the audio later. Some comments that are so true. He says that progression, I like how it sounds like an Egyptian or Middle Eastern song, perfect in talking about Moloch and so much eye-opening things. And this song is an eye-opener. And then Jermaine, this is Jermaine. This smacks so hard. He absolutely loved that. I mean, using metal to break down principalities and powers and strongholds. And this was a conversation I was having with a friend via text last night. It's amazing. No wonder Satan tried to steal heavy metal as a genre from God, because it breaks strongholds, drives out demons, and you can use it to just smack idols down left and right. And that's what you're doing with this. And Michelle says, I love the combination of musical influences, heavy all around. Absolutely. And that was your new vocalist, Tiffany, correct? How did she find her way to Millennial Reign?
Okay, and again, that's kind of a step-by-step story. James, after we put out the first album, he also owns his own business. He has a roofing business, and he does a lot of commercial work. And he got so busy after we had released that first album and we'd done several shows, and we had began working on the second album. And he'd gotten so busy, he just called me one day. He says, "Look, I'm sorry." He says, "I'm just so tied up with my job. I just don't have time to do it anymore." So he did a few more things to kind of finish out. He didn't just leave us, up high and dry. He did a couple more shows with us, and then Travis came in on the second album. He's a friend of mine. He was just kind of an interim. He came in and he wrote for the second album so we could finish the album to get our commitment done with our record label. And we also had several shows booked. I remember we had one with Hammerfall, had one with Theocracy. We had Exodo Fest in Mexico that we were committed to as well. And he came in and basically just helped get us through all of our commitments. And after we got most of the stuff out of the way and we had a lull time in there, that's when we started looking for somebody else. And Steve, our drummer, has this friend who is a vocal coach here in the Dallas area. And he talked to him asking if he knew of anybody that might be interested in doing this. And he says, "Well, are you opposed to having a female?" And of course, we talked about it. We're like, "No, not really." So she came out and auditioned for us. Well, she did it. She came out and just nailed it. She did a really good job. And we also had two shows lined up, one with Accept and another one with Striper. We've opened for Striper many times and toured with them as well. We had those two shows coming up that we had to get through, and Tiffany did the shows with us, and we wanted to see how she performed in a live setting, and she just nailed it live. She just did a really good job. So after those two shows, we just went ahead and just said, "Okay, if you want to stay, well, it's yours." And that's how she ended up in the band.
What a story. What a story. And here you are talking about all of these bands that you've worked with and that you've been on stage with. And I took a look when you sent me some of your information. You've been on stage with some of the heavy hitters. A lot of the bands that I've gone to see and that I've appreciated. I mean, the list, Delane. As a matter of fact, Orlando, who's watching right now, can tell you what we're doing here started by me meeting him at a Delane concert in Tampa, Florida, which is crazy. Sonata Arctica, and Michelle's here because of Delane as well. Weird connections. We'll talk about that offline. Sonata Arctica, Hammerfall, Omnium Gatherum. I mean, these are like, this is what I call the prime rib of metal bands when you put them out there. What's it been like being on stage or supporting these acts, especially as a Christian band with such heavy lyrics? How have the audiences received you, and what's the experience been like with these guys?
Well, our main thinking at that time was, we needed to play with bands of like genre because that's who we were reaching out to. And we couldn't really preach the word off the stage, but we let the lyrics do our talking for us. And the funny thing is when people would meet us after our sets, they were more interested in the name really than the lyrics, because a lot of people don't understand what the term Millennial Reign is. And of course, when we would explain what it is, well, then the light would go on and say, "Well, you're a Christian band." Yeah, we are. And that would open up the dialogue, that we were able to speak to them a little bit more about our faith and just things going on. We being in the venues we were in, we couldn't really do any kind of type of an altar call or anything like that, but we could at least plant the seed, and that's what it was about.
Yeah, that is so cool that you got to be able to do that. What's the most interesting reaction that you've had from somebody who's like really banging their head and really interested and excited about your music, and then they talk to you and they're like, "Oh, you're a Christian band." What's the most interesting reaction you've had?
Well, just that. I can remember this one girl. I'm trying to remember who it was we were opening for. It was either Y&T. I think it was when we opened for Y&T, if I'm not mistaken. And our habit is, after we do our set, we'll go out and hang out at our merch booth, so we can actually meet people as they're coming up for merch. And this one girl walked up to me and she said, and again, it was about the name. And she's like, "Well, what is that? What's the name? Because the term millennial wasn't being used as it is now, for younger people when we first released the first two albums. Millennial didn't really come into big play, I guess, until like maybe 2016, 2017. At least I didn't remember hearing it until around then. But she walks up, she's like, "Well, what's with the name?" And I told her, I said, "Well, it's not actually in the Bible, but it's a term used for the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ after the 7-year trial tribulation." And of course, her response was, "Okay, so you're a Christian band?" I'm like, yeah, we are. And she literally just turned around and walked away. That was the end of the conversation.
Oh, wow. Well, hey, planted a seed. It's really funny because before I went to seminary, I thought millennial was that thing that Han Solo and Chewbacca flew at less than 4 parsecs in the Kessel Run.
But that was a bird, the Millennial Falcon.
Yeah, the Millennial Falcon. And Jermaine is weighing in. He says Sonata Arctica is one of my favorite bands. Nightwish, Epica, Camelot, all amazing bands. Yeah, that is so awesome. And you have supported some of the pioneers. I mean, they are the pioneers of Christian rock and metal. Striper. I mean, you go back and you look at their story. How did that opportunity come about? And what was it like to support these legends that have, really paved the way and paid a price for what they did?
Yeah. Well, let me just start off by saying, I've gotten to know them and their crew, their manager, even their road manager at the time. As many times as we've opened for them, and those are some of the most sincere, nicest guys you'll ever meet. They are really down to earth, But as far as how that came about, we landed the opening slot for them when they were doing the Fallen tour at the beginning of 2016, I think it was. And we opened up for them here in Dallas. And after that show, it was probably about a week later, I actually got an email from their manager. And he went on to tell me that Michael Sweet had actually, I guess he called him because they were still on the road at the time, but he called him and was telling him about us. And I'm using his words here, not mine. He told him that we were a high quality band and we would be good to go out on the road with them for their 30th anniversary of the To Hell with the Devil tour. And of course, I have to tell you, I was a little taken back by that, but we, as long as they were going to be out, we couldn't do the whole tour, so we just did the southern leg of it. All of us guys, we all work, so we couldn't leave our jobs for 2 months at a time. But we ended up doing the southern leg of that. And after that tour, we just got to know him really well, especially Oz. I still talk to him every once in a while. Him and I, on the last night of the tour, him and I actually exchanged phone numbers, so we talk every once in a while. And ever since then, every time they came into town, for some reason, we were just the go-to band. They would contact us, and we'd end up opening up for them. And again, like I say, they're just really super guys. Once you get to know them, they really are.
Wow, what a privilege to be able to do
Exactly.
that, and what
That's
what
the
an
way we look at
honor.
it too. That's the way we
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah. And another way to look at that too is that is the Lord honoring your faithfulness
Oh,
and your stance and your courage for what you're standing for and the way you're doing it. Now, Brian has brought up a comment, and I am very interested to hear about this. He says, "Don't forget about the Pagan Fest at Burns Park. Do tell, Dave."
I don't remember what it was called. It wasn't actually Pagan Fest, but once we got there, we found out it was a Pagan Fest, and they hired us to do it. We were playing like the band I was telling you about, 316, 80s style band, and we were playing, and they were literally a tent, if I remember correctly, a tent about 150 feet down from us, and we could hear something going on in there. And come to find out, it was like they were conjuring the dead. It was like a seance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we were all just kind of looking at each other. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. I guess I just completely blocked it out. Thanks, Brian. But yeah, it was just. It turns out that it was a pagan festival, and I get maybe they didn't know we were a Christian band, but we were outspoken about who we were. 316, duh, So it was just one of those things. Yeah, that's a story. Yeah, I guess I had definitely forgotten about that.
It's funny because when you say that and you're telling me about how you wound up there, I was just thinking back to Paul on Mars Hill when he was preaching about the unknown God. He was in the middle of Pagan Fest, basically, preaching at Mars Hill. And I've found more openness with a lot of times with pagan people about the truths of Scripture and spiritual things than somebody who's been exposed to a lot of church or structured religion. Well, that is so awesome. That is so cool that you got to do that. Let's rewind the clock and talk about some 80s music for a minute. You did a cover of Triumph's Allied Forces. And for me growing up, Triumph was one of those bands that was just like at that upper tier, that upper level. I always looked up to them. How did they influence you musically, and why did you choose to cover Allied Forces?
Well, musically, I believe that album came out in it was either 80 or 81. I graduated high school in 81. Yes, I'm that old. But that album, Allied Forces, the album, just really, it was in that time of my life that just really made a enormous impression on me. And their lyrics, even though they were not a Christian band, their lyrics were very thoughtful and very, for lack of a better word, they just had clean lyrics. Anybody could listen to them. And Fight the Good Fight was the song that really, really impressed me off that album. But in doing covers, there's been a lot. I've heard a lot of bands have covered Fight the Good Fight. Some good, some not so good. And we just wanted to do something different. But as far as why we covered it, why we did the video, and all that, 2020, that was the year that the COVID insanity apocalypse, and nothing was going on.
Right.
And just like every other band, we were just doing things to stay relevant. So we ended up releasing that EP, and it was just basically a re-release of a few songs off the first album with Tiffany singing. We released the Allied Forces video, and then we released the Innocent Cry video as well. But and that's really why we decided to cover it. Now we actually did play that at a few shows, and we were using it to close the show. So, I mean, we haven't really, as far as the show, we haven't really played it in quite a while, but we decided just to resurrect it and do a video, just to, like I said, to stay relevant. And the funny thing about that is the day we released it, I don't remember what I was doing, but the day it released, maybe 3 hours later, it was some time after it actually released, I opened up my phone, opened up Facebook, and Triumph themselves had run across that video, and they posted it from their Facebook page.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they posted it, and we actually picked up a lot of fans
Wow.
off that video because they posted it on their Facebook page. And then maybe like 2 days, 3 days later, I got an email from the band asking for a copy of the video. So what they did, I sent them a copy of it, and they put it on their YouTube site. So you can go to their YouTube page, and there's our video on their page.
Oh, man, God has just been blessing you since you really dove into this. And I'd like to share a portion of the video that you guys did, because it just looks like you're having so much fun doing this. And we want to rock tonight. This is Millennial Reign with their cover of Triumph's Allied Forces. Hold on to your seats, folks. This is going to be good. Well, that definitely got our viewers' attention. I saw the numbers for the eyeball just increase as that was playing. That was amazing. And I'm going to do this for you because I know that our viewers that watch on a regular basis, they wait for this every time. We have Mac. He's our Boston Terrier studio dog. And Mac, the metal dog, gives that Mac, the metal dog, seal of approval. So you can the guys over to you got the Mac, the metal dog, seal of approval. If you want that on the back of your next album with a couple milk bones, how many milk bone ratings that is? Like 5. Awesome. Do you?
Awesome.
I got 2 comments here. I got one from Charles Martin. He says, I want to play like Dave when I grow up. Jermaine says that Tiffany's voice is so clean, and he gives you, this is Jermaine's hieroglyphics that he usually sends, which means he's just flipping out right now. And yes, Jermaine was waiting for Mac to show up. Mac is 14, but he can still rock like a young pup. So he sits in here most of the time listening to the music as I'm previewing it. So
I've got a little wiener dog that sits there the whole time, and I'm working in the studio.
Oh, that is so cool. That is. What's your dog's name?
Boomer.
Boomer. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
My wife named him when we got him.
Oh, that is so cool. I want to ask you this question real quick. It might be a long answer, but your genre, power metal, is not just like, a few riffs and a cool, couple hooks and some catchy lyrics. I mean, you're telling a story, very intricate. Its structure is very complex. How do you write this? How does this come to you? What is the process?
Well, my writing process is a little different than what I guess you could say a normal band is. I was in situations over the years that either I was the primary or only songwriter, or well, basically that's it. I was the primary or only songwriter. And so I've never really been able to write in a band situation. If I get together with somebody and try to write songs, and we end up just staring at each other. I mean, it just that's not the way it works for me. Usually, first place it starts is right here. I'll literally have a riff going in my head, and until I can get home and sit down with my guitar and work out the riff, get it to where I want it, and then I'll record that. And once I record that, then I'll just start building everything else around it. Sometimes I just have an intro. Sometimes I just have a verse riff or a chorus. And once I record it, then that's when other things, and I listen back to it, that's when other things will start coming to me. And even the keyboard parts. I'm not a keyboard player by any means, but I'll hear keyboard parts that go along with what I'm doing, so I end up writing that out as well. I mean, it's just a sit down and do it type process.
Wow. I mean, what you're putting together is just absolutely phenomenal. And as I've been hearing your story, just seeing how God's been honoring everything that you've been doing, and it's really an honor for me to be able to interview you, because you reached out to me a couple weeks ago. And I had known of Millennial Reign. I had heard your music. I got it on one of those Ulterium. Yeah, I got an Ulterium Records CD sampler a couple of years ago. Some of your tracks. I was like, whoa, this is good stuff. And I was telling Rick on the phone from Metal Sharpens Metal before you went on air. I was like, when I was emailing back, my fingers were kind of shaking because I was like, well, this is really, really cool. We need to take a quick commercial break to pay the bills, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about and share a song that Travis Willis did with you. And if I remember correctly, he was the guy that kind of helped you get to the, get the commitments done.
Yeah, okay. we just called him the interim because he came in and spent about probably not quite a year with us, just getting us through all of our commitments.
Well, when we come back and our viewers and our listeners hear Travis Willis, they're going to be like, this just could not have been somebody in the interim. I mean, it's going to blow you away. We'll be back in a flash.
A perfect way to proudly display your love of God and country is with a custom-made wooden flag from 100% reclaimed materials. The Rugged American Flag Company can design a custom wooden flag for you or a loved one. A custom wooden flag makes the perfect gift for those serving in the military, law enforcement, emergency services, or any other profession of service. Call 803-521-0708 or email the Rugged American Flag Company, that's the Rugged American FLGCO at gmail.com to design your flag today. Stay rugged and rock on, America.
What's that?
I was going to say, nothing says America like an R-15 laying on an American flag.
That's right. We're all about that over here. We've got good friends over at the Rugged American Flag Company. They sponsor the Ravens Heart live stream, and they're major sponsors for Get Revelation Rock Fest in Charleston. Let's talk about Travis Willis and this song, Break the Tide. Oh, hey, and you know who's watching right now? The Rugged American Flag Company, definitely.
I'm pro Second Amendment, so I had to say that.
Awesome. And he says, definitely a new download for me while I'm building flags, and thank you for the plug.
Yeah, actually, I'm a veteran as well, so no problem.
Thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah, and you said you were too, right?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Well,
United States Army Reserve. Yes. And still serving in several different ways and training our future officers for the United States military. And was up very early this morning for physical training. I got up at 3:45. So it's amazing that I'm still here. But man, this music is pumping me up right now. Break the tide. What does it mean to break the tide? What are we talking about when we roll into this song?
Okay, actually, I could use the last 2 years as an example for this song. Again, going back to the insanity of the last 2 years, especially in the media, and it's just a tidal wave of fear. You know, fear is a spirit. Fear is as much as from Satan as it can be. And, you know, this song is just basically saying, you know, you've got to break that tide and keep your eyes on Christ. That's the gist of it.
Wow. And for our viewers and listeners, I want to play this. We're going to play a segment of Break the Tide. And if you like power metal, you are going to love this song. And this was released in 2018?
Yeah, this album is The Great Divide. And yeah, it was released in 2018.
Yeah, and this is going to be another download for the Rugged American Flag Company playlist for when they make the Rugged American Flag. Check this out. This was with their vocalist, Travis Willis, the guy who just kind of helped them fill the commitments. Keep that in mind when you watch this. Okay, just a minute here. If Roy Khan from formerly Camelot and Don Yeah, and Don Doc and got in a car wreck, and they had to sew both of them together. That's what you would have there. What
Right.
that is absolutely amazing.
Well, Travis, it's no secret. Travis is a big Roy Khan fan. He really likes Camelot. So, needless to say, we get a lot of comments on that.
Orlando says that one is great for the try not to headbang challenge. I couldn't.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I was sitting here and I was just about ready. I mean, I was about ready to just throw my notes up in the air. I was just having so much fun. Jermaine says that voice, and I was thinking the same thing about that sound. That is so well put together. What a pleasure to listen to, and it just drives home. It just goes to show. Because a lot of the themes and a lot of your European power metal and your symphonic metal, they're pagan themes. That's just the way that it is. And you have to understand it and take it for it is what it is. But at the same time, in that community, anybody who's interested in spiritual things, God's drawing them. They're just kind of going in the wrong direction, and that you're in that stream. And at a level, I mean, you're serving up porterhouse steaks of metal. I mean, this is just, and to reach them with that and plant those seeds. I'm just so excited about what you're doing. Do you have any new projects that you're working on right now?
We are actually working on the new album. Everything got slowed to a crawl, over the last couple of years because of everything that's been going on, just like anybody else. But we are working on the album. Musically, I have the majority of it written, and I've actually got a friend collaborating with me on the lyrics for it. So this album, I'm wanting to go a little more of in your face as far as the word goes. I'm a huge Petra fan. I loved them with Greg X Bowles, but when they really reached out and grabbed me were the John Schlitt years. And This Means War through Beyond Belief. Those albums were the ones that just really spoke to me the most. Lyrically, from what I understand, Bob Hartman wrote the lion's share of the lyrics on the albums, and the guy was blessed with talent. I mean, the things he wrote about lyrically that just really spoke the word. And that's something that I've been wanting to gravitate more to. Again, being down the last couple of years, have given me a lot of reflection time. And on this next album, what I'm wanting to do more of a true ministry. I'm not really looking for a lot of opening shows for the internationals or nationals like I have been. I've mainly been looking more for ministry type shows, festivals, hence how I contacted you. And the last two festivals that we were booked for, one was Elements of Rock in Switzerland, and we were supposed to return to Exodofest, but of course, the restrictions being the way they've been, in other countries, it just keeps getting pushed back. So I've been, even though we're not really geared for a lot of U.S. Stores, I guess you'd say, we're really looking more doing more of a U.S. ministry here locally.
I really appreciate that. And the Rugged American Flag says ministry with a punch. And I just want to take a second to encourage you with something. As you say, I mean, your lyrics, and you pack a punch already. But as you get more in the face and as you get bolder with the word, God's going to bless that at a whole different level that you've not expected. He's blessed you already with the bands that you've opened for, that you've opened for Delane and Hammerfall. That's where I met Orlando and Armor of God at. And there has been some ministry that has occurred at those shows. Delane doesn't know it, but there's been ministry because there's been believers there and they've all kind of found each other. But as you begin to be more in your face with the scripture and the words, you're going to start to see people set free because of your music in a way that you've never seen before. I really believe that you're going to start to see people healed. I believe that you're going to start to see people delivered from the demonic as you break those strongholds with your music. We've kind of seen that to a degree. We had a taste of that at Rockfest here last year with a lot of ministry that occurred, a lot of warfare that went on, people that were delivered. We had a baptism right at the end of the show. And we never imagined that. We were kind of hoping for that. And I really believe that as you become more in your face, more bold with that, God is going to bless that to a whole new level for your band. And there'll be a whole bunch of doors and opportunities that open up for you that you never imagined. And it's just a privilege to be able to meet you tonight. I know that we've talked via email. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So before we close out, how can our viewers and our listeners support you or help you get to that place where you want to be to minister the way you want to minister?
Well, you can go to any of our sites. Of course, we have our own, our website is just millennialreign.com. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/millennialreign. And if you're interested in buying downloads or music, you can do that through our website, or we're on Bandcamp as well. That's just strictly digital through Bandcamp. Just find us. I think it's bandcamp.com/millennialreign7, if I'm not mistaken. But number one would be prayer. It takes the wisdom of God to be able to do things correctly. We're human. We make mistakes. There's actually other bands I'm speaking to, as a matter of fact, while I'm thinking about it, I just spoke to Les Carlson the other night from Bloodgood. We were on those festivals we were supposed to do with them in 2020. We had 3 of them that they were headlining, and we were supposed to support them on all 3 of those festivals. And of course, they all got pushed to the wayside. So I'm speaking to him and looking for some ways that we can work together with them, because they are a true ministry band as well. And finding the right bands to work with, that's one thing. You can be a Christian band all day long, but what I'm looking for is to see people's lives change now. That wasn't really, I can't say that was the real direction in the beginning. It was more or less just glorify God with the lyrics. But now I'm just going to go ahead and say this: we're living in very short time. 1 Thessalonians tells us, the rapture is right around the corner. At least that's my belief. And the last 2 years has been a sifting. In Matthew 13, when Jesus is telling the parable about, the wheat in the fields and the tares being planted with them, and a lot of people mistake that for being the rapture. It's not. It is a sifting of separation of the people who are the tares and the people who are the wheat. And that's why he makes the statement, no, don't lift the tares out, because you may uplift some wheat with them. And that's what we've seen the last 2 years. I mean, we've seen true colors flying out of our government, out of just people in the media. I mean, there's no mistaking who's a tare and who's the wheat these days. And my point being, we're living in very short times, and it's time to see people. They're going to have to make a choice one way or the other. And I want to be on the end of seeing people's lives change for the right choice.
Amen. Amen. I stand with you in that. Jermaine says he's going to be praying for you in that as well. We're here to support you any way that you can. I'd like to welcome you to the Lithos Cry community. I mean, we are not just a live stream, and we just don't put on events. We are a community, and anything you need from us, let me know. And I'd like to get you also in touch with our prayer warrior behind the scenes. People don't see her because she's always praying behind the scenes. Her name is Christina, and she has a very strong prophetic gifting as well. And I'd like for you to meet her and talk to her as well. And I'll get you in contact with her. Orlando made a very interesting comment. Orlando is like an intellect. I mean, he would have been like one of the great writers of, commentary of scripture and systematic theology back in the day. He says, if the internet gives us one blessing. It's the capacity to reach the human race at a global level. And that's what we've been doing tonight. Dave, thank you so much for joining us. I have one last commercial break before we close out this evening. Dave, if you could hold on, and I'll be back with you. And to our viewers and our listeners, until next week, peace out and rock on.
The church in Charleston, South Carolina is leaving the building on Saturday, May 14th. For a day of ministry through music at Get Revelation Rockfest 2022. Headlining Get Revelation Rockfest at the Hanahan Amphitheater is Warriors of Light. Other artists include Jenna Parr, The Last Trumpet, Ziggy, Armor of God, Filthy Rags, Red Calling, Xandria Cross, Nettie, Tricord, and Suffering Gift. More information and tickets can be found on Eventbrite or at lithoscry.com. That's LITHOSCRY.com. Come on out and join us to rock on and set captives free with the gospel.
And we look forward to seeing everybody that's been watching tonight at Get Revelation Rockfest. And again, as I said, until next week, peace out and rock on.
lithoscry.com